you may feel frustrated. You may understand the struggle. It's been really, really hard for you to lose weight, even though you're doing everything right. You feel like you're eating good, you're exercising, all these different things, but the scale just isn't budging. You are not alone, my friend. There are a lot of people in the same exact boat as you. And today I'm going to review 5 simple steps. Simple doesn't mean easy because you still got to change your lifestyle, but 5 simple steps help you have success in your weight loss journey with PCOS. What is PCOS? It is short for polycystic ovarian syndrome. This has, among other complications, it does make losing weight more difficult. And unfortunately, this is a very common diagnosis among women in their childbearing years, which is about 4 to 20% of females in their reproductive ages. Now, before I dive into that, let's talk about why. Why is it so difficult to lose weight with PCOS versus not having PCOS? PCOS is an endocrine disorder that affects your hormones. Hormones are responsible for a lot of different body processes that are going to impact your weight, including when we feel hungry, how intense the hunger levels are, cravings, how our body uses the food and the calories for energy, our stress levels, and so much more. That is a whole nother talk about how our hormones run all the different things in our body. So I will talk about that on a different day. Unfortunately, with PCOS, there is still a lot that we don't know, especially as far as how it interacts with losing weight and why it makes it so much harder. But what we do know is that just losing a little bit of weight, 10% off of your current body weight, has shown to improve symptoms of PCOS. Some people have symptoms of PCOS, some people don't. Some people just struggle with the weight loss and that's it. Other people have lots of symptoms. And so the weight loss, they kind of chase each other, which came first, the weight gain or the PCOS, but they do help each other. Losing weight will help the PCOS. So let's dive into the 5 easy steps. Step 1, be patient with your progress. It may take you a little bit longer to lose the weight than someone who doesn't have hormonal imbalances. That's just the fact of the matter. There's nothing you can do about it, so you might as well accept it. Less stress on you, right? So while the slow progress can feel discouraging a lot of times, changing and transforming into a healthier lifestyle has benefits in itself outside of weight loss that you may not notice right away. So you have to be patient. Even if you don't lose a significant amount of weight, healthy eating and exercise can reduce your risk of, first and foremost, developing type 2 diabetes and furthering that, developing heart disease, both of which women with PCOS are at significantly higher risk for. Now, step 2, exercise regularly. We all know this. It's nothing new you've never heard before. So let's dive into why it's important. The official recommendation for adults is to participate in about 150 minutes of physical activity per week. That's about 30 minutes, 5 days out of the week. We don't have to work out 7 days a week. That's just over the top. Studies have indicated that women with PCOS do have a harder time losing weight with exercise alone versus people without PCOS, which kind of makes sense. But while exercise may be slower, again, it has so many other benefits outside of the PCOS that can help relieve symptoms, improve your mental health, give you more energy. So it's not its own isolated thing that you're exercising just to lose weight. It has so many other benefits, and that's even with someone without hormonal imbalances. So when pairing exercise with a balanced diet, increasing your physical activity can be much more effective than diet or exercise alone with addressing that stubborn weight loss. You knew I was going to bring diet in. We'll touch more on that in a second. So if you're struggling to exercise more, you have a desk job, you're super sedentary, and you just don't know how to start the whole routine process, here's some quick tips that you can do. Find activities that you enjoy. So you don't have to have a super intense gym routine. This shouldn't have to feel like a chore all the time. And there isn't one single exercise that is the best. It's all about what works for you, your schedule. So focus on activities that you enjoy, whether it's playing a sport, you're going jogging or walking, listening to an audiobook or a podcast. That's a really great way to get some exercise in. Going for a walk with your dog, hiking with friends on the weekend. And also don't forget housework. If you're breaking a sweat and you're vacuuming stairs, mopping is another really good one. I'm OCD, so I hand scrub my floors and that makes me break a sweat and really gets my heart rate up. That counts as exercise. Again, It doesn't have to be this, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to watch the clock and I'm going to work out for exactly this amount of time. No, it's physical activities that is getting your heart rate up and making you break a sweat. That's how you know you're exercising. So the second step, or second tip rather, is to build that routine. Once it becomes a consistent habit and it's like clockwork for you, it's not going to feel like a chore that you have to waste a lot of mental energy just to get it done, because it has become wired in your brain. So it becomes easier for you. And even then, when it becomes a consistent habit, it's not like you have to be doing the same exact thing every day. Now, I am telling you guys this, even though I do it for myself. I do the same exact thing. I play a sport of weightlifting that I absolutely am obsessed with, and I go in, day out, and I repeat the same movements over and over and over, but that's what I love. So find what you love, and if that means switching it up, do something different. You don't have to do the same thing every day. A lot of people will join a gym and do classes because they don't have to think about it, and whoever's running the classes, they change the programming from week to week. So you may be going to the same place, but you're doing different movements all the time, and a lot of people really enjoy that. And so last tip for making exercise routines a little bit easier is to remember that every little bit counts. So say you usually do your workouts in the morning and you accidentally sleep in late, you forgot to set your alarm clock, whatever. Don't stress. Every little bit counts. So even when you get to work, every hour you could set an alarm, take a 5-minute break, go for a walk around the office, do some air squats or some push-ups right beside your desk. Even if it's 5 or 10 minutes of physical activity, it's still better than doing nothing at all, especially with those who have desk jobs. I'm guilty. And I do this. Every hour on the hour, I go for a short walk. That's just how I get my movement in outside of the gym. And if that's all you can do, again, it's still better than nothing. So that was step 2. Moving on to step 3, balance your diet. Okay, so let's dive into this. You guys knew this was coming. There isn't one specific diet that's going to work for everyone. Experts recommend, and I recommend, people who need to lose weight, who want to lose weight, especially women with PCOS, should focus on eating more protein, more vegetables, and healthy sources of fat, while at the same time reducing sugar intake and simple carbohydrates. We'll get into a little bit more detail in a second. A lot of women do struggle with insulin resistance. That's a big buzzword right now, and I'm going to end up doing another talk on that in a couple of weeks. But with the insulin resistance comes elevated blood sugars. So making these tiny little tweaks in your diet can really, really reduce your risk for developing type 2 diabetes, because insulin resistance is essentially a precursor to type 2 diabetes, but not necessarily if you have insulin resistance, you are doomed to type 2 diabetes, not if you make these changes. So before actually focusing on the food parts of your meal, always, always, always pay attention to fullness cues. I can't stress this enough. Regardless of what is on that plate, whatever is in your meal, try as often as you can to eat undistracted, so you can really tune in to when you're starting to get that sensation about being full. I always tell my clients, stop when you're about 80% full. If you're really stuffed, you're 100%, you feel like you can't even take one more bite, you've gone too far, you have overstuffed your stomach. It takes about 20 minutes for the whole chemical reaction when you start putting food in your stomach and the leptin and the ghrelin levels are flowing, and for the messages to get sent to your brain, it takes about 20 minutes. So that's why I say eat slowly, put the fork down between bites, eat undistracted, get off your phone, stop scrolling through social media when you're eating. It is not good for you. And that's actually a tactic I tell clients with constipation too, because if your brain is on a phone and you're eating, you're not paying attention to the meal and you're barely tasting it. So what happens is you eat it too fast, you completely bypass fullness cues, you put one massive bolus in your stomach at one time, and that actually increases stomach aches, increases reflux, and increases constipation. And now we know that if you slow down just a little bit, you'll get fuller faster, which over time means you eat less calories. That's why that works. So once you feel about 80% full, you have that sensation, you're like, I feel pretty good. I'm not like starving hungry anymore. That's when you stop. Even if you have a little bit left on your plate, save it for later. Or if it's just like 1 or 2 bites, just throw it away. Like, it's not worth it. It's really not worth it. Gone are the days where we have parents who are like, sit at the table until you finish every single piece of food on your plate, or you're not getting up from this table. Anyone else's parents do that? If my mom's watching, sorry, you did that. You totally did that. It's not like that anymore. Don't bypass your fullness cues. That's when the trouble happens. And you can easily cut back on calories without actually changing what you're eating just by doing that. Starting with that one simple step, eating undistracted, stopping when you're full. So moving on to the fundamentals of how to set up your meals. Eat your protein and vegetables first. Have protein and vegetables in every meal and eat them first. So eating these first can help lower your blood sugar versus if you were to eat the carbs first. So if you have chicken, veggies, and rice on your plate, don't go for the rice first. Start eating a little bit of the protein and veggies. Try to finish as much of that as possible and then add in the rice. And that'll kind of slow down the uptake and the breakdown of the carbohydrates so it won't cause that huge sugar spike, which if you do have those sugar spikes later on causes a crash. And when you crash, you get really shaky, you get really hungry. And what's the first thing you do? Your body craves sugar. So it ends up leading to overeating. So you see how all these tiny little changes have massive, massive impact. Now, moving on to carbohydrate sources. You want to focus on carbohydrate sources that are more satisfying, i.e. complex carbohydrates. So switching to whole wheat pastas, whole wheat breads, those are great sources, not just of complex carbohydrates, but also contain a lot of dietary fiber, other nutrients. The fiber will help fill you up, keep you more satiated. Other examples are switching from those little packets of oatmeal that have a ton of sugar added into them and buying like the big container, which also saves you money. The big container of steel cut oatmeal takes just about as long to cook. You can make overnight oats. You can soak them overnight in the water. So when you nuke them in the morning, it only takes 30 seconds to a minute. Add your own fruit. Add your own fun stuff to it. If you want to sweet it up, add a little bit of stevia. Don't buy those little packets. That's a great way to just cut back on sugar with one meal alone. There's tiny little things that you can do. You don't have to completely overthrow your whole entire diet. Other complex carbohydrate sources, sweet potatoes, wild rice, brown rice, things along those lines. And then lastly, this isn't actually about the food in the plate setup, but cravings. You have to learn how to cope with cravings. What's happening too often is you are eating really, really good most of the time, but you're either having these cravings, whether it's constant birthdays at the office, so there's always cake and sweets, and you grab one here and grab one there and you don't realize it. You're just instantly giving into these cravings. Or you're eating really, really good for majority of the time, majority of the day, but you have one meal or the weekend. A lot of time it's the weekends where it's a free-for-all and you way overdo it. You give into everything that you've been depriving yourself all week. And that just, it balances your week out. Like if you're eating roughly 1,800 calories during the week, which should stimulate weight loss, but your weekends, you're like close to 3,000 calories, it brings your weekly average up. And that's why you're not seeing the losses that you want to see. So regardless of what the situation is, you have to learn how to control these cravings, especially with PCOS. A lot of women with PCOS, just because the hormonal imbalance, the cravings are so much more intense. Some people can say, oh, it's no big deal, like I want some chocolate. But sometimes, you get that craving, especially like right before our periods, and you're like, if I don't eat chocolate right now, I might die. Like I might implode on myself. That's how intense these cravings can be. And knowing there are tactics and there are definitely ways to reduce them, to learn to cope with them, because sometimes they don't always go away. You just learn how to deal with them. And some great ways to do this is getting a therapist or a coach, someone who can help you work through the triggers, help you find the triggers, and then how to cope through these things, giving you day-to-day tactics to manage this on your own. Moving on to step 4. So please avoid over-restricting calories, over-exercising, extreme dieting. It's doing more harm than good. Extreme diets and extreme exercise programs may seem like the path to take to get you the quickest results, especially if you've already tried and failed, or you're losing the weight really, really fast. You're just not losing it as fast as you want. But these lose 30 pounds in 30 days plans, they're not realistic, and they do cause more harm than good. And here's why. When you cut out too many calories per day, especially like all at once, you go from eating, like 2,500 calories today down to 1,200 calories. You are at huge, huge risk for nutrient deficiencies, which can have an array of other health consequences. It also causes metabolic adaptations, which makes your body take a lot longer to utilize what you are taking in to burn calories, which means the weight loss slows down yet again. And this will also lead to rebound weight gain because you go on this extreme, unrealistic diet that you just can't maintain. And often what happens is you go right back to your old habits. And when you're doing the same old habits, you're going to go back to the same old weight that you were before. Now, moving on to the exercise side of things, injury. If you go from never exercising at all straight into a CrossFit class with no foundations, nothing at all, CrossFit 5 days a week, I promise you, I guarantee you, you're going to injure yourself. And it's just not worth it. So work on slowly building into things. And that goes back to step one of being patient with progress and really just living through it, being patient one day at a time, one small habit at a time. Just be patient, seeing the losses come out and really embrace the journey in itself. Going back to the whole over-exercising thing, there was one study that showed exercising without changing any eating behaviors at all didn't lead to as much weight loss as expected. And quite honestly, what I've seen is it doesn't lead to weight loss at all, because what I see is women will start a brand new workout program, and tell me if I'm wrong. They feel so good about their new exercise routine. They worked so hard. So what happens after the workouts? They're like, oh, I deserve this. It's okay. I worked out today. I deserve this. I can eat a little bit more. So they end up just eating back those calories, because exercise burns calories, but not as much as people think it does, unless you're doing like a really, not even extreme, but like a very consistent weightlifting routine where you're building lots of muscle. These workouts aren't going to burn that many calories, not as much as you think so. So moving on to the last and final step, step 5, arguably the most important step. Please seek help. You've tried and you failed, and you tried and you failed, and you've done it so many times over and over, same cycle. It's vicious. Keep failing, keep failing, keep failing. What is one thing you haven't done yet? You haven't sought help. You don't have to do this alone. There are people out there to help you. First step would be speak to your primary care provider. Always involve them first, or your gynecologist, because they're usually the ones that can diagnose and manage PCOS as well. Keeping in mind that there isn't a test for PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. It's a syndrome. It's more so a diagnosis of exclusion. You can still have PCOS even if you get an ultrasound and you don't see all those eggs. Or all the cysts, not eggs. It's like a list of symptoms. And when you hit all these symptoms or most symptoms, that's when you get diagnosed with it, because it's a syndrome. And that's how it works. There is no test that says, yes, you have it. No, you don't. So first talk to your primary care or your gynecologist. What I will say with this is the women I have talked to have already done that. And unfortunately, because there is no like magical medication to say, if you take this, this is a cure, this is going to fix everything, they usually get brushed off. If they don't get brushed off, it's all about drugs. It's either metformin for the insulin resistance, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, depending on what your blood work looks like. They'll get pushed on birth control, which again, not a terrible thing if your periods are crazy heavy, or you want to take birth control anyways because you aren't planning on family planning anytime soon, but not really reasonable if you don't want to be on birth control, which is perfectly fine too. And diet medications, medications to help you lose the weight without giving you any nutritional guidance or any help with how to set up an exercise routine, which is why I'm doing this talk right now. So if you don't want to try medicine, if you either already talk with your PCP, you got a plan, you don't like the plan, you want a second opinion, whatever the case is, you have to be in charge of your health. It is your responsibility ultimately to take care of yourself. And so if none of these drug treatments seem like the thing that you want to do, my recommendation, talk to a nutritionist, especially a nutritionist who understands what you're going through, what you have, and how to help you. So if you've had a hard time, you've failed over and over again, you've really struggled to lose this weight, no matter how long you've been trying, Sophrosity Health has coaches who are trained in this arena to help you and support you through your weight loss journey. Now, again, doesn't matter how many times you failed. We're going to help you find a routine that works for you and be the accountability you need to be successful no matter what.